100 years ago, women and men across the United States achieved a monumental win for the women's rights movement. On August 26, 1920, the 19th Amendment to the United States Constitution was ratified, extending suffrage to women. In honor of the United States Suffrage Centennial, we invite you to jump aboard the Suffrage Special Whistle Stop Tour. The Suffrage Special train will make 8 virtual whistle stops. We will visit Spokane, Pasco, Ellensburg, Vancouver, Bellingham, Seattle, Tacoma, and reach the end of the line in Olympia on August 26th. Join us as the Suffrage Special Whistle Stop Tour winds through Washington once again. The role of women in the development of what would become Whatcom County started long before permanent white settlers arrived. Called Peace Weavers by author Candace Wellman, Native American women from the Lummi and Nooksack tribes played a vital role in the establishment of peaceful ties between people and cultures. Many of these Native women were married to white settlers. As the lumber and fishing industries expanded in the late 1800s, more settlers arrived along Bellingham Bay. Often, newly settled women depended on the Peace Weavers to help them with the skills and knowledge needed to survive in a wilderness environment. These cross-cultural relationships eventually were ignored, or, as Wellman writes, despite all that, when local histories were written, the best the indigenous wives usually got was, he married an Indian woman. It was a difficult time for women who worked hard but had few rights in Washington Territory. Women had little political sway up until 1883, when the women of Washington Territory first won the right to vote, at least for a short time. At the turn of the 20th century, women entered the workforce in the growing manufacturing sector. Some of the largest fish canneries in the world were located in and around Bellingham Bay. By the end of the 19th century, women were a common sight in the canneries, but the hours were long and the pay was low. Despite these factors, women were now earning their own wages. This, coupled with the affordability of bicycles, which offered women a way to transport themselves, women expressed an independence rarely seen in past generations. Effie Roeder, on the far right, was one of several Bellingham women who were politically and socially active at the time. Wealthier white women in Bellingham were privileged with the time to convene at local women's clubs. Sometimes individually, but more often in organized clubs or lobbying efforts, women were politically and socially active in their communities. They influenced public policy on issues that ranged from health and education to working conditions and temperance. In addition to the Roeders, Delia Kreitz, Frances Payne Larrabee, and Helen Loggy were at the forefront of this community involvement. These clubs included the establishment of the YWCA, or Young Women's Christian Association. They began to evaluate the conditions in their communities and find injustices in child labor laws, women's working conditions, education, and liquor laws. There was no doubt the voice of the white wealthy women had influence in their community, but this movement was not necessarily inclusive, especially in terms of race and class. By the early 1900s, the women's suffrage movement was in full swing, and Bellingham women took positions of power to influence policy and culture. At the local level, in 1911, Edith Fuller was appointed the first matron officer of Bellingham's police department. Edith's position was dedicated to keeping young women safe and to monitoring the working conditions for women in the area's growing industries. Edith was also involved with the YWCA, an organization that continuously advocated funding for Edith's position. Bellingham's Frances C Axtell was one of the first 2 women to serve in the Washington State Legislature, serving 1913 to 1915. Prior to her legislative term, Axtell worked with Emma Smith DeVoe of Tacoma to restore a woman's right to vote in Washington State, which had been gained and lost multiple times before its final approval by Washington's male voters in 1910. France's campaign manager was Bellingham's Ella Higginson, a writer and poet who in 1931 would become Poet Laureate of Washington State. While she wasn't strong on suffrage itself, Frances did become instrumental in the movement, stating in a Seattle PI interview, "But now that we have it, we are going to do something with it." Frances tackled issues such as working women's conditions, minimum wage, child labor laws, and education. She was dubbed by some in the press as the lady from Whatcom who votes as she pleases. The influence of Bellingham women was not limited to politics. Violinist Mary Davenport Engberg sparked a cultural shift when she established the Bellingham Symphony Orchestra, conducting the first program in 1914. Mary is believed to be the first woman to conduct an orchestra in the country and gained international prominence in a field dominated by men. These individuals made brave strides in normalizing women as political, social, and business leadership in Whatcom County. But, as is still true today, it was not inclusive of all women. Women of the Lummi Nation and Nooksack Indian tribe continue to assert themselves and spearhead change, not only in their cultural heritage, but in the political field. In 2019, Whatcom County elected Deborah Leckenhoff, who, at the time of her election, was the only Native American woman to serve in the Washington State Legislature. Leckenhoff tackled a wide range of policy issues, including the environment, natural resources, climate change, education, housing, and agriculture. This year, we also commemorate the 100-year anniversary of the League of Women Voters, a successor group to the National American Women's Suffrage Association. The League of Women Voters is still very active to this day and continues to evolve its membership and values. In their 2018 article, Facing Hard Truths About the League's Origin, League of Women Voters leadership acknowledged its complicated history. The League was founded in 1920, just months before the ratification of the 19th Amendment by American suffragist Carrie Chapman Catt. Catt was a complicated character, a political operative, and by modern standards, yes, racist. While fighting for the 19th Amendment and lobbying Southern senators, she famously claimed, "White supremacy will be strengthened, not weakened, by women's suffrage." These remarks are sometimes brushed over as a sign of the times or a political strategy, but actions speak louder than words, and our organization was not welcoming to women of color through most of our existence. We are having tough conversations about race in this country, and making sure that as an organization we confront our place in history. African Americans were shut out of the vision of the League. As we continue to grow our movement, we acknowledge our privilege and must use our power to raise the voices of those who haven't always had a seat at the table. Today, we invite all people, regardless of gender, gender identity, ethnicity, or race, to join us as we commit to righting the wrongs of our past and building a stronger, more inclusive democracy. The League of Women Voters of Bellingham was founded in 1956 and was originally dedicated to women's rights. Over time, the League has expanded its focus to a variety of political, economic, environmental, and social issues. League members advocated for shoreline management, water issues, taxation issues, and juvenile and adult justice systems, among other issues, during the latter half of the 20th century. Now let's hear from some of the current members of the League of Women Voters of Bellingham.
Hi, I am Chelsea Macias, museum educator with the Whatcom Museum. For this program, I am joined by three prominent voices from the local League of Women Voters Bellingham chapter.
Kay Ingram, and I've been a member of the League for probably about 12 years. Served on the board for a couple of terms and currently am working in the area of women's economic security.
Cindy Madigan, and I've been a member of the League since 2016, and I'm currently the chair of the Voting Rights Issue Committee or interest group, and I'm mostly interested in voter representation.
My name is Shovia Muchurahando, and I'm a part of the League of Women Voters, and I'm on the board as well as chair of the Racial Equity and Healthy Democracy. And it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, it's lovely to see you all here, and thank you for joining us. So the first question I want to kind of broadly ask what it means to you all, the right for women's votes.
Okay, I know for the Blacks, because of the Black suffrage, the movement still continues. For us in America, it just depends upon what region you're in. In terms of the bus stop here, when coming here as a newly resident of Bellingham, Washington, it has actually been easier for me due to the fact that I can mail in my vote. Whereas coming from the state of Georgia, I have been blocked before by long lines, constraints of work. That has only happened once. And after that happened, I always took off or created some excuse on voting day.
I think for me, all of the public policy issues that I care about are determined by our elected officials. And I feel that having the right to vote means I have a right to make positive change for community.
Yeah, and I think it shows how important it is to think about the entire ballot, how important it is to think about what we call the down ballot, because there's so much that we locally can do. And I think that's always inspired me in terms of the activities of the League and the fact that there's a real meaningful way we can put our voices out there and contribute. And I recently watched a documentary, two-part documentary on the vote and what it took. And it's really inspirational in terms of what those women gave and how much tenacity they had and how they really hung in there. They didn't do it all right. I was frustrated as I watched because, of course, the diversity issue wasn't addressed, et cetera, but at least it was a beginning. And the fight kept on, so that's a good part. But I think that's what kind of impresses me with all of it.
How has the women's suffrage right movement shaped the political, social, economic society that we experience today?
After the passage of the 19th Amendment, women used their voting rights to campaign for an expansion of social policies created during the Progressive Era. In 1920, 14 women rights organizations joined together and formed the Women's Joint Congressional Committee to lobby more aggressively for federal level social welfare legislation. This organization was successful in establishing a mother's pension program for poor women with children, educational and industrial reform such as child labor laws, and the Shepard-Towner Act of 1921, which gave federal funds to states for health programs for women and children. And then unprecedented opportunities happened in the New Deal era for women to work in positions of responsibility in federal government. It's estimated that more than 2 million women were employed at the start of 1933, many of whom represented the sole support for their families, but thanks to the traditional view of men as being the breadwinner, these women went largely unrecognized, not only by government officials, but by the public at large. So this change established the precedent of the plight of working women and made them take that into consideration in any state or national effort to provide relief to the unemployed. And Frances Perkins, as Secretary of Labor, was the first female cabinet minister in American history. And then in this, the women's movement of the 1960s helped set the foundation for later generations of female political candidates. The number of females holding office improved significantly beginning in the 60s and the 70s, and it's a trend that's continuing, but slowly making progress. So 100 years now after white women fought for and earned the right to vote, we are seeing another surge of women representatives in increased public policy proposals and support for improving the social determinants of health, including racial and social equity, climate change, access to affordable health care, food, housing, childcare, including more options for rural preschool. However, American women are still underrepresented in government in proportion to their population, the percentage of their population. Although women are a majority of the electorate of the population, women are represented by less than 1/3 of their number of the seats of political power, with the exception of the US Supreme Court, where there's 3 out of the 9 justices are women. And women of color hold even less political power. Progress has been made, but further action is necessary. And this is where the League is trying to always be on the cutting edge of what needs to improve, what needs to change to make, empower more voters, create a more perfect democracy. One of the things that we're looking at now is the electoral system itself. The Washington State has also been a leader in passing Voter Rights Act, and especially one specifically for Native Americans. And some of the remedies under these voting rights acts are a change in how the system of casting a ballot and determining the representation is changed. And so the League of Women Voters in Washington back in 2000 did a study on electoral methods, and 23 other states followed after that. And the conclusion was that our single member plurality system that we currently use is not designed to reflect all the views nor elect representatives. Our founding father, John Adams, said the electorate, the representatives should think, feel, reason, and act like the electorate. So they should be like an exact miniature of the population, and we're not there, we're not there yet. And so at this year's National League of Women Voters Convention, as a result of more than 20 years of work from a dedicated group of League members and allies, delegates voted to concur with the studies and now has a position to support electoral systems at each level of government that encourage participation and enhance representation for all voters, including being able to advocate at the national level for the Fair Representation Act. There's currently a lawsuit in Yakima County because they have not had any Latinx representation on their council. And so the Campaign Legal Center, Ruth Greenwood, she calls herself the League's attorney, is helping with that lawsuit and looking at different ways of electing representatives so that they are more reflective of the population. So that's exciting news that we're looking forward to seeing how that turns out. And the other thing the Leagues is working on is money in politics, trying to look at small donor empowerment, how we can encourage everyday people to have a voice, in a way of contributing to campaigns. We have a position to abolish the Electoral College and always looking at election security and transparency. And so the work continues. It's similar to like the suffrage movement, where a lot of the work begins at the state or local level, and then eventually there's enough momentum that we can make a change at the federal level. And so I'm excited to see what the future holds.
What are some of the challenges that women face today? And this is a two-part question. So the second part, how does understanding the past help us overcome some of these challenges?
Thank you very much. The obstacles that women face more often than not stem from economic insecurity. The reality is that changing circumstances in one's life can often be unexpected, and they can impact and happen to anyone at any time. So changes have a major impact on the economic well-being of a household. Whether you're in a short-term or a long-term situation, economic insecurity may be the result of any number of these circumstances. An example is that currently 40% of Americans don't have $400 in the bank to handle emergencies. Women often carry more responsibility when it comes to caring for loved ones and extended families. So the responsibility for facing changing circumstances may fall to the women in the household. Of the 43% of Americans who say they live paycheck by paycheck, 85% of those are women. So achieving economic security, I think, is the most important challenge women face today, and has so many avenues to pursue. Much of what I'm going to share with you now comes from our League's 2015 study on women's economic security in Whatcom County. And the obstacles those women faced living in poverty and seeking a path to economic security are the same as those that may need to be addressed for women who face economic insecurity at one time or another. So more short-term, or unfortunately may extend into long-term. Well, first of all, the obstacles that some of the women referenced when we talked to them during the study was that it's fear and anxiety that they might not be able to improve their situation, and that haunts them in terms of what do they do and how can they tackle these things. They also have frustration with the bureaucratic rules that don't take into consideration their current circumstances, and that they aren't really able to be adaptable to the needs of an individual client. And finally, they fear that they might slide into an even more dire situation. It doesn't take much to tip that scale so that people are having trouble just even holding their own. But women are resilient, and they want to be in control of their lives. It's very clear. But it's support from family, friends, and individuals in the community agencies that really helps them achieve and work for all of this. But more specifically, for many, financial insecurity means, as one woman said, was having a roof over my head. And the list that I'm going to bring out now is just really in sync with what Cindy was talking about in terms of the agenda for women. And so there'll be a little repetition here. There's currently an increase in Whatcom County in a need for housing, and a decrease in affordable housing. So having affordable, safe, and healthy housing is really essential, and is one that we really need to think about and try to advocate for. For many, having a job that provides a living wage, that allows equal pay for equal work, provides opportunities for upward mobility, and benefits that include, among other things, paid family sick leave. Those are all critical as well. And women are not only responsible to take care of their children, but they often have older family members as well. So the paid family sick leave is a really important issue for women. There's also a critical relationship between those two things. Having a job means that your home needs to be near daily transportation, both within the cities and towns, and equally important in the county location. So expansion of the transportation opportunities is very important in terms of helping women seek and achieve economic security. And it makes it possible not only just to go to work, but also to provide to go to childcare services. And regarding childcare, we are facing a major decrease in affordable quality childcare in Whatcom County. And it's just essential that we somehow work to figure out how to handle this, because again, it relates to whether women can work, which relates to whether they have a job and whether they can be independent. So it's just such these things snowball, and they really interface, so they work together. In addition, there's also a need for quality early learning opportunities, because that impacts younger children in the long term in terms of providing them a foundation for their own current economic and future security. Further, women need to access, as Cindy mentioned, comprehensive health care, health education, and access to the full spectrum of reproductive health services. Our county is in really dire need for adequate mental health services. Women also need increased, enhanced, affordable legal services and affordable college education. They need to be expanded educational opportunities for life skills and other related support services. And these are basically the critical issues that need to be addressed and available to support women seeking to gain control of their lives and achieve economic security. Now, your second question was, how can understanding our past help us overcome these challenges? I think the National League's Transformation Journey, which is a document that was developed, has really started this conversation and will be a roadmap to addressing the issues I'm going to raise. For me, the first step in looking back is to acknowledge that we did not celebrate and engage our diversity as much as we should have. And that now we have to commit to being a just and equitable community that incorporates a commitment to equity, inclusion, and social justice. This relates to a lot of issues of race, income disparity, age, sexual orientation, gender identity, religion, disabilities, etc., as Shavia was mentioning. And finally, in addition, I think the other point is that we must promote and actively listen to and engage the full range of diverse voices that women bring to the table, not just once in a while for a kind of a quick, what do you think about things, but on a regular basis in planning discussions, in working and reviewing mission statements, policies, and procedures, and when hiring at all levels, including representation at the executive and board levels, so that we're really engaging those voices. And it's such a rich collection of voices with the diversity that we can bring to the table as a women's group. And that we need to work with other organizations to have that same sense of diversity and inclusion. So I think those are the important lessons from the past for me that I think will help in solving the other challenges that I talked about earlier.
How do you imagine the fight for women's rights will look for future generations? So moving forward, what does that look like?
The fight for women's right in the future it's detrimental and very critical. And I know a lot of times people talk about how much the African American vote is very important. But if you look at our population, as they are talking about lowering the incarceration rate, and they more focus on male, there are more Black women being locked up today than in the 80s or the 90s. And there's no spotlight on that. Also, economically and socially, both the movement, has gained more rights and privileges, but we're still failing in those aspects when you want to talk about economics. And when you look at our national statistics of how far behind we are when it comes to income and economic stability. So unless these things unless this is addressed, especially when it comes to income and the distribution of income, whether it's single families or single Black women or college generation who can vote, if they're not allocated or have access, as we have had, to financial aid or financial assistance through our state, you will see an elimination of a lot of people having that ability to, have an address to vote. Our new superintendent Secretary of Education, she has been cutting funds away from our education system and the way she's cutting them, it's affecting families. Um, that's so deepening that is cutting into the ability to, cast that vote. A lot of people, when they simplify it. Oh, all you got to do is just go and cast a vote. Well, you have to have a state ID. You have to, if you don't have a state ID, you have to have a driver's license. You have to have the ability to get to the poll. You have to have the ability to read those questions, comprehend and understand exactly what are they talking about. You have to make sure, well, how do you go about making sure, advocate that the policies that you are concerned with are being advocated. And if our lives are busy and we're all working low income jobs, we don't get a chance to give that participation that is needed in order to make sure that our issues are heard, that in long term allows us to be participating and be at the polls on that date to vote. You may not even have the time to even look at your candidates until the day of the vote, and you may not even know everything. And that's the value of making sure that the League of Women Voters stands in our future, because a lot of people do rely on the voting pamphlets that we send out, the voting materials that we send out. It's got it's like your notebook on how to vote, not how to vote for the candidate. That's why we're nonpartisan. You vote for whomever, but we give this nonpartisan information on all the candidates and how to go about. So that question can be very tricky in terms of our existence and looking for future generations. So that's why it's so important. And I see that as an importance, no matter where I go and serve for the League of Women Voters, that everybody is at the table. And that is your key to piggyback off of what Kay said. Um, if you don't have that, then, because we have a dominant society where whites, they established the structure, and that structure was not really established, and that's why they have to be inclusive. I mean, they have to bring in other people to the table, because when the table was established, there was no room. So it's so important that we continue to make room, and as we become even more diverse as a society. I would like to also touch on religion. I know for Muslim women, we also don't recognize how there's still a form of oppression that exists because of their family structure. Men tend to have more power. That's not to say the way they are structured is wrong or right, but when it comes to policy and just having that right to hear your voice, whether it be on reproduction rights or employment rights, or the right to even wear a hijab, yes, they should have that right to get to the poll. And that's why it's important to have men at the table as well, to express those points that maybe women also don't think about, especially when it comes to men of color and the issues that they face. So the women's movement, it's hard. It's hard. It's difficult. We have to be strategic. We have to be very knowledgeable to the point to reach everyone and to build our foundation, especially economically, because we have certain litigators through the league that go and help fight for many causes in the court system. We just had a case, I think it was 3 months ago, with the state of Tennessee. and they were trying to block the people who set up and register people to vote. And they were told that if they didn't take a certain class, that they would be fined or jailed for that. And it was our national league that was able to litigate that case and get that resolved. So, as far as future generations, it's unfortunately it's up to us, and hoping that our society as a whole will continue to go through the transformation of understanding how important it is for our right to vote, and to continue to, empower us and make sure we stand.
Thank you, Shovia, again for another just completely in-depth answer and look to our question on what does it look like for future generations to fight for women's rights. And you're completely right that this is a fight of right now in order to kind of move forward, right? We're looking at marginalized groups, right? That's a current fight, and moving forward, we're going to have to really encompass marginalized groups, see them in representation, seat them at the table, and kind of dismantle some of those structures you were talking about. We're going to have to look at the structures that are in place and how we can dismantle them and bring up some of these marginalized and underrepresented groups. So thank you. I really appreciate that. So lastly, I want to give you guys a chance to kind of make any final remarks in regards to the league and to your organization. So I'll go ahead and pass that on to you.
It's I know that it's an honor to be a part of the League of Women Voters. When I was young, I heard of the League of Women Voters, but and I knew how important voting was because my mother, it was like, when it was time to vote, I remember even before starting school, I was, when I was 4 years old, and my mom made it such a hasty moment. It's like, come on, I gotta go vote. And, you could be halfway across the room and she would snatch my little arm up and we're like out the door. I'm not even walking down the stairs. She's like snatching me down the stairs. And then we get to the voting poll, and I remember this place. It was really, really small, like inside of a tiny church. And I would look at my mom and be like, why is the place so small? And then I remember stepping out and looking at the long line, and I'm like, why is our voting place right here? And this was in Chicago, where I grew up, on the South Side. And, I remember seeing all my neighbors, and I would see some of my friends, and we were happy because we got an opportunity to see each other, and we knew. And I remember waiting long, and I was like, oh man, we can play until the sun go down, or it just depends upon at what point, the voting, whatever you were voting for, took place. So it was kind of a fun time for me because I would play with my friends while my parents would be standing there talking to, the local neighbors, and they're talking back and forth. So it was like a time of gathering for me. And I didn't realize everything behind it, but that's what it was for me. And then as time went further, when I got to college, I just remember racing through my dorm room and looking for my student ID and trying to find out, can I vote with my student ID, or do I have to have my, let me just take both. And then I remember my friend saying, well, you want to be careful with your driver's license because that might prevent you, because they'll see that you're from Illinois. So, it was like, oh, well, let me just take both. And I got my dorm, and I would take my receipt, for my tuition so that they could see. And they will give me whatever ballot that I needed to, if it was absentee or if I could vote there. And when you're in a dorm, it's absentee because you're not officially a resident. And I'm just like, wow, and I remember those experiences. And I look at the league today as they reach out, because I'm also a graduate student at Western Washington University. And it's like, how many students feel the same way or are going through what I went through? And thank God that our league comes to the campus, set up and educate the students so they can know where they need to vote, or how they need to vote. I mean, we just assume because it's natural for us because now we're adults. But I haven't forgotten that experience being a college student and just trying to figure out, is it, absentee ballot for where I come from, or is it, can I just vote with my student ID? So those struggles are very important that we continue to, link and address, especially our future generations. I think that bringing ethics back to the class is very important so that people can understand why voting is important. And I'm hoping as a nation, we will have a stronghold to that. I know as an educator, I see the importance of it. And even for seniors, not forgetting our seniors who can vote, may not have a way, having that transportation or just helping them to get that ballot to the box. Maybe putting a ballot in front of every senior home or a senior facility. I think that's so important to make it easy and accessible for them because, even I may not look my age, but even at 50, 51, I'm realizing sometimes you need things right at your fingertips before you can get it there. And that's even with mail. And we do it with our mail. You go to the mailbox and they have, you don't only just pick up your mail, they have a little slot for outgoing mail. Well, we need to make that easy within a lot of our homes, our mailboxes and so forth. And I think that we need to start celebrating voting day. When we have a voting day, why not push for policy to have, for president voting or Congress? All those positions are very important. So I think if we had it turned into a celebration, that would spread that mentality and bring us all closeness and realize we have something in common that's going on in all of our lives at that moment, and it should be celebrated. And maybe if we celebrate it, people will stop trying to oppress it, because when we show value to something, then other people see the value in it as well. So I would like to close with that.
I'd like to remind everyone to check out the League of Women Voters websites. If you just put League of Women Voter in your browser, you'll come up with the state, local, and national league sites. And the other thing that's really helpful during election season, like Shovia was mentioning, is we have a website called vote411.org. And it's a great toolkit that has information. You put in your address and it brings up all of your local races, a sample ballot, and it's also linked to all of the virtual forums that are happening now. There's links to that like the state races that are being televised on TV. There's a link so that you can watch them on your computer. So it's a really great resource for finding out information about candidates.
Thanks to the both of you. So the links that Cindy mentioned are provided on the screen, so please feel free to go visit their webpage. And thank you all for joining me again. What a wonderful this conversation with you all.
Hello, I'm Linda Allen, and I wrote the following song as the theme song of the Washington Women's Heritage Project. We have such a history of both the raising up and the silencing of women's voices. Understanding that history is key to understanding the passion of the women who struggled and continue to struggle to be heard through the ballot box. So here's to the women who led the way on the battle for the 19th and on whose strong shoulders we now stand. You don't need to be shy about joining me to sing along on the chorus. Here's to the women. History books give us historical facts of soldiers and sailors and men with settle this land. Women together set straight to the task, with schools and libraries, a city at last. Without all the women, now where would we be? Working and caring throughout history. Their hands on the plow, but their stories untold. Here's to the women who shouldered the load. Some came here from Mexico, Norway, Japan, to raise the good crops in this faraway land. Some came as picture brides, so little choice. Some came as slaves with no home and no voice. And deep in the forests and out on the plains, some women were watching as new women came. Some longed for friendship and offered a hand, but politicians and soldiers soon bloodied the land. Without all the women, now where would we be? Working and caring throughout history. Their hands on the plow, but their stories untold. Here's to the women who shouldered the load. Some women grew tired of having no say, so they listened to Abigail, Emma, and May. For 50 long years they fought for the vote, so their daughters could enter the future with hope. In hard times and good times, the women would share their songs and their stories, their loves and their fears, and their histories recorded. The song never ends in the memory of mothers and sisters and friends. Without all the women, now where would we be? Working and caring throughout history. Their hands on the plow, but their stories untold. Here's to the women who shouldered the load. Here's to the women who shouldered the load. I offer this closing song in honor of the women who've come before and the women who will come after us. And the very best way to honor our foremothers is to vote. It's a hard-won privilege. As the suffragists warned, eternal vigilance is crucial to retain our democracy. Seasons come and seasons go to learn the things that women know. Plant the seeds and tend the land, working hearts and working hands. If seeds are scattered to the wind like broken hearts there might have been, daughters plant them once again. Many generations, many generations. Grandma held a burning light, read her Bible every night, found the faith to carry on with sons and husband dead and gone. In my darkest times I see Grandma's light enfolding me. Though her faith's a different hue, Grandma, I remember you. Many generations, many generations. My mother takes her own sweet time, drinks her days like vintage wine. In the kitchen I can hear her voices rising sweet and clear. Raised her kids and worked too hard, planted roses in our yard. In the fall she pruned them back, kids and roses needed that. Many generations, many generations. Now my daughters make their way, I smile So many seeds I tried to plant, nurtured now in their strong hands. Fingers dance on their guitars, songs as true as shooting stars. Grandma's light is burning still, I believe it always will. Many generations, many generations, many generations, many generations.
Our next whistle stop on the Suffrage Special is King Street Station, Seattle. Here, we will dive into the role that women of color played in the suffrage movement, locally and nationally. All aboard!